Welcome back, dear troop analysis enjoyers, to the clinically insane institute of Bannerlord data regarding troops. This time, if you didn't guess it already, we are going to talk about the shock troops performance regarding patch 1.9 and patch 1.0, since they are basically the same thing. Because in patch 1.9, shock troopers finally got back some 2020 vision, and can finally hit stuff using the advantage of their long weapons to keep at a safer distance. And also, we have to address the question, is the Pikeman finally good? No, I mean, have you seen them? Okay then, what about, is the Pikeman the worst Pikeman then? Because although the Pikeman might still only be worth for increasing our medicine experience, another unit has been added, the Hired Elite Pike. This is what the community had to say about it.
You're joking. Not another one?
As we can see, they are extremely enthusiastic. Anyway, let's address the methodology behind the test I've been able to run. As always, for those who want to get to the data, they can skip ahead to this timestamp. For this yet relatively quick update on shock troops, we will be talking about 10 units. Those are the Battanian Falxman, Veteran Falxman and Fian Champion, the Vlandian Voulgier and Pikeman, the Aserai Palace Guard, the Imperial Elite Menavliaton, the Sturgian Heroic Linebreaker, the Mercenary Elite Pike, and since the Khuzait don't have a foot one, the Khan's guards were used. The troops had to perform 3 different set of tests regarding melee combat, but before going over the methodology of each individual test, let's address the constants. All tests had a battle size of 300 versus 300, as although it might not be your typical encounter, this is the number that has led me to the most reliable test throughout my long experience. It's a perfect combination between not having too many units like a 500 versus 500 and also not having too little like a 200 versus 200, where a quick morale victory would lead to a repeat of the test. The units will always perform 7 tests, with the first one being against the smaller tiers and going up until the highest ones. All tests will be performed at normal speed, as 3 times the speed is a bit different. This doesn't mean anyone that tests on 3 times speed has strange data. In my opinion, it depends on the scope of the test. If you aim at finding what formation is best, it's good enough, but when you want to get underneath a unit performance, it's a bit different. This is also the reason why there are a relatively low number of tests that you might have expected. Before talking about the stats, this is what you are going to see on screen. In the center, there is going to be a video showcasing the unit in question. It's important to know that the test and the footage on screen are not the same. On the left and right of the screen there are going to be 2 tables, one regarding melee performance and the other regarding anti-cavalry performance. Both tables are going to show the average rank of the unit. The closest the number is to 1, the better the unit performed. Underneath the rank, the stats are going to be showcased. The left column indicates the related stat. On the center left we have the data taken from 1.8. On the center right we have the data taken from 1.9 that I want to remember is applicable to patch 1.0 as well. While on the right column we have the change in terms of percentage between the 2 patches. A green number indicates a unit improved, while a red number will indicate that the unit got worse. Other than the 2 or fewer tables, the remaining space might be used to list some interesting facts or simply showcasing the weapons or armor of the unit. I know it might feel like a lot. If it is, don't worry. After I have finished talking about the unit, there are also going to be some graphs on screen to put the stats into perspective. Going back to the methodology, all of the tests have been taken either through custom battles or the enhanced battle test mod. No captain perks or party leader perks impacted the units, so the data we are going to show is the basic performance of the unit, and can further improve using perks and better tactics. And when we are going to talk about the Khan's guard, always remember that they were dismounted. Now, over to the individual tests. For test number 1, we will be evaluating the melee performance against infantry of all units not containing pike in their name. So Khans and Fians were told to hold fire, while units with throwables weren't. All troops had to fight against a common enemy, all from the Imperial line from tier 1 to tier 5, and 2 extra tests against militia to gather numbers that might tell us how good some troops are at sieging. The commands used for this test were a simple charge. not changing the line of the troops in any way to try and keep a controlled environment as much as possible. Test number 2 and number 3 are very similar and are going to be averaged together. They both aim at evaluating the unit against cavalry, but in 2 different scenarios. In one, the unit will be told to stay in loose formation before the start of the battle, and I will reference this test as standing. This might simulate a situation where a unit is alone in the open field against a charging knight. In the other one, the units will be told to charge from loose formation, and I will be referencing this test as charging. In this case, the cavalry units used were mostly from the Imperial line from tier 3 to tier 6, with tests against tier 2 using the Vlandian Squire and the Khuzait tribal warrior, while for an additional test against tier 3, the Khuzait Raider was used. The 2 archer units were allowed to fire in the standing test, but not in the charging one. Now that we are done with the methodology, remember to keep in mind that Kia means skilled in action, while KD means skills to death ratio. And I will have 2 ranks for each unit, not containing pike in their name, one for melee combat and the other one for anti-cavalry combat. Another thing is that anytime I'm talking about low tiers, I mean units ranging from tier 1 to tier 3. with high tiers ranging from tier 4 to tier 6. At number 10 we have the hired elite pike. This should come as no surprise honestly. If the pikeman was a bad unit before the update, there is realistically no reason for a unit that has the same skill but less armor to be better. In fact, the new hired elite pike ranks 31st out of 37 in head plus body armor and 35th when considering all armor types. And even during his theoretical best match, his average anti-cav rank is 7.6. which is just 0.4 points off the worst possible score. They rank 5th in KD against low tiers with a score of 41, but dead last in KD against high tiers with a score of just 0.2, and they were the only unit to not end with a positive number. When it comes to Kia, they rank last versus low tiers with a casualty chance of 37%, and they were among the worst units I have ever tested in Kia against high tiers, with 96% of their units ending up dead. I suggest using this unit only if you are a masochist. There would be no gain otherwise. It's possibly the worst unit in the game. At number 9 we have the Pikeman, with an anti-cavalry rank of 6.6 out of 8. Good thing it didn't take me long to answer if this unit was good or not. They still aren't, for the same reason they were never good. 1.9 this seemed to make them a little bit better, yes. They can now keep a positive KD against most cavalry units, but basically any other type of unit will be better in the same scenario, while not being one-dimensional. When it comes to anti-cav stats, the Pikemen ranked last in KD against low tiers with a low score of 14.7. but at least they kept it above 1 against high tiers with a score of 2.42. When it comes to the casualty stats, the pikemen were below average in Kia against low tiers with a mediocre 20% casualty chance, but they were very poor in Kia versus high tiers with a casualty chance of 57%. This unit is still extremely poor, and I have no idea why Tailwords decided to add another pikeman to the game instead of reworking this unit. At number 8 we have the tier 4 Falxman. The first of the true shock troopers is off the board with an average rank of 5.58 out of 8, divided in 4.83 for melee and 6.33 in anti-cav. Honestly, with the changes of patch 1.9 addressing not just cavalry but also the problem that was plaguing the shock troopers and their long weapons, it shouldn't be much of a surprise to see this unit losing out on the other troops in comparison to 1.8, where they were borderline the best shock troop. So now the fun begins. We can now see what really changes from 1.8 to 1.9 across the units. When it comes to melee stats, the Falxmen decreased their performance from 14.29 to 7.64 against low tiers, a loss of 46.5%. And they also decreased their KD against high tiers from 2.49 to 1.46. Another loss of roughly 41%. The negative trend continues when it comes to the Kia versus low tiers, where we see an increase from 10.44% to 13%, a change of 24.5% in casualties. And it doesn't end here unfortunately. Even their Kia against high tiers increased from 43.8% to 51.2%. a change of 17%. When it comes to melee, one thing has to be said. The difference between this unit and the tier 5 Falxman is basically none. In fact, the overall KD across the test was 0.1 in favor of the tier 4. And this was also confirmed with the total Kia being around 2% lower for the tier 4. What really ends up making this unit worse in this patch in comparison to the Veteran Falxman are the stats against cavalry, where they didn't do very well. Their anti-cav score was just 6.33. Their KD versus low tiers was 17.68, second worst just to the Pikeman, while their KD against high tiers was 4.78, only unit worse are the two Pikemen. When it comes to the casualties, the Falxmen are the second worst against low tiers with a 26% chance, and third worst against high tiers with a 25.5% chance. In conclusion, these guys are still kinda scary, especially to fight against, but with the shock troopers now behaving the way they should, they are no longer as good in comparison, especially when multiple situations are considered like anti-cav. Their low armor rank also doesn't help them much. At number 7 we have the Veteran Falxman with an average rank of 4.84 out of 8, divided in 5.5 for melee and 4.17 for anti-cav. The Veteran Falxmen are the most improved unit in patch 1.9, and we might even say it out loud that this patch was made exactly to fix them. And it did, but it didn't make them monsters, just an average to below average unit for the class. When it comes to their melee KD against low tiers, the veterans improved it from 4.66 in 1.8 to 7.59 in 1.9, an increase of 63%. But where they are basically unrecognizable is their KD against high tiers. They changed from a lowly 0.2 to a 1.67, an improvement of 735%, while their Ki against low tiers changed from 26.9% to 13.3%, halving their casualties in comparison to patch 1.8, and their Ki against high tiers also got changed from 85.7% to 59%, a decrease of 31%. As far as anti-cav, the veterans ended up with a KD against low tiers of 19.08, and a KD against high tiers of 8.41, a Kia against low tiers of 19.25%, and a Kia of 16.78% against high tiers. Looking at these, it looks like they are better against high tiers than low ones, but remember that in the low tiers there are 2 rounds against horse archers, so I advise to compare the units between one another using the graphs to have a more realistic idea. So, overall the Veteran Falxman got their much needed AI fix. But it's not really enough to say that this unit is among the best for its class. But at least, it looks like they have more upside than the tier 4 on 1.9, which you kinda expect. At number 6, we have the Vlandian Voulgier with an average rank of 4 out of 8. The Voulgier is another unit that we expected to be much improved in patch 1.9 thanks to the AI fixes. And the fact that they are now in the middle of the pack instead of being one of the worst is proof that it did something. The melee rank of the Voulgier is 4.5, while their anti-cav rank is 3.5. The Voulgiers changed their KD against low tiers from 14.2 to 7.11, a decrease of 50%. They changed their KD against high tiers from 0.9 to 2.03, an improvement of 125%, while their Ki against low tiers decreased from 15.3 to 14.3, a marginal 6% decrease. And their Ki against high tiers changed from 73% to 44%, a decrease of 40%. When talking about cavalry, this is where the Voulgiers rank pretty well with a score of 3.5 out of 8. They rank 6th in Kia versus high tiers with a 17.84% casualty chance, and they rank 5th in Kia versus low tiers with an 18.84% casualty chance. In terms of KD, they rank 5th versus high tiers with a score of 8.67, but they ranked only 7th versus low tiers with a score of 24.93. The Voulgiers got much better in melee, and the only stat that got worse is the KD against low tiers, which I advise to keep an eye on going forward, as we are going to see a common trend across the units. At number 5, we have the Aserai Palace Guard with an average rank of 3.42 out of 8. The rank was 2 against infantry and 4.84 against cavalry. This unit is a strange one to evaluate. Amazing at dealing with infantry, but quite bad at dealing with cavalry. But let's talk about its stats, starting from the melee, where the Palace Guard worsened their KD against low tiers from 115.44 to 19.86, a massive decrease of 83%. And the change from 1.22 to 2.29 against high tiers, an improvement of 104%. Their Kia against low tiers changed from 4.12% to 6.5%, an increase of 58.5%, while their Kia against high tiers changed from 71% to 41%, a decrease of 44%. The Palace Guard had a score against cavalry of just 4.84, and their KD against low tiers was 27.18, while their KD against high tiers was 6.11. Their Kia against low tiers was third worst at 22.7%, while their Kia against high tiers was 7th at 19.1%. The Palace Guard is a very polarizing unit, great when it comes to dealing with foot units, but don't ask them to take care of many horses. At number 4 we have the Imperial Elite Menavliaton with an average rank of 2.17 out of 8. The Elite Menavliaton melee rank was 3.17, while their anti-cav rank was 1.17. Like most of the units with swingable polearms, they seem to prefer fighting riders other than other infantry, but the Menavliaton looks to be the most complete unit out of this type. In comparison to 1.8, their melee KD against low tiers changed from 99.36 to 18.03, a decrease of 82%. While their KD against high tiers changed from 0.84 to 2.21, an improvement of 163%. In terms of Kia, the Menavliaton got worse against low tiers, changing from 5.5% to 7.4%, a 35% increase in casualties, while their Kia against high tiers changed from 68.5% to 45%, a decrease of 34%. When in terms of anti-cavalry, the Menavliaton KD against low tiers was third best with 90.8, and their KD against high tiers was also third best with 10.1. In terms of Kia, they scored third best yet again with 16.2% against low tiers and 12% against high tiers. Overall, the Menavliaton seems to be a very solid unit that brings a good weapon, solid armor, and fighting versatility, but lacks throwables. And they are also a great example as a teaching for anyone out there interested in testing units. If you were to only look at the performance against high tiers, you don't get the whole picture. Testing against the lower tiers is as important, if not more important, to understand the unit's performance. At number 3 we have the last of the Rian shock troopers, and it's the heroic Linebreaker with an average rank of 1.55 out of 8. The Linebreaker's melee rank was 1.17, while their anti-cav rank was 1.92. The best shock trooper of 1.8 is still there, and this time he can claim to even be good enough against cavalry to maintain the first position. But their performance is not all violets and roses. Their fate is very much aligned with the trend of the other units. In fact, we can immediately see a big shift when it comes to the KD against low tiers. The change from 124.5 to just 60. The change from 124.5 to just 67.1, a decrease of 46%. And like the other units, their KD against high tiers improved from 1.6 to 2.5, an increase of 57%. Their Kia against low tiers wasn't impacted as much as the KD and changed slightly from 4.68% to 4.87%, a marginal increase of 4%. While their Kia against high tiers decreased from 53.8% to 37.3%, a change of 30%. When it comes to anti-cav stats, the Linebreaker KD against low tiers was 4th with 63, while their KD against high tiers was also 4th at 9.6. In both Kia stats, the Linebreakers ranked 4th with a Kia against low tiers of 16.6% and against high tiers of 14.8%. This unit doesn't just bring a good performance, but they also have the highest two-handed skill out of the standard shock troopers at 150, carry a few throwing axes in case you ever need them, can kill multiple units with one blow thanks to the two-handed axe, and they tend to pop shields like it's a firework festival when sieging. What is not to like? They also have the second highest head armor in the game and an above average armor where it matters. So, are you ready to know which one of the two overpowered boys is the best in these situations? At number 2 we have the Fian champion, with an average score of 1.21 out of 8. The Fian's melee rank was 1.33 and their anti-cavalry rank was 1.09. The Fian's melee KD against low tiers changed from 180.3 to 21.75, a decrease of 88%, while their KD against high tiers changed from 3.4 to 3.43, a marginal increase of 1%. Their Kia against low tiers increased from 1.32% to 6.33%, a change of 380%, while their Kia against high tiers decreased from 45% to 33.2%. A change of 26.5%. When it comes to anti-cav, the Fians rank first in both KD stats, with 132 against low tiers and 20.7 against high tiers. When it came to Kia, the Fians ranked first against low tiers with just 0.96%, but ranked second against high tiers with 11.7%. Even an insane unit like the Fian champion has felt the 1.9 changes, especially the ones involving the performance against low tiers. And although this might make some people rage because they lose a Fian to a tier 2 unit about 4 times more often than before, these guys are still better than any real shock trooper, just keep that in mind. But if they are just second, this means that the last and only number 1 must be the Khan's Guard. Congratulations! Yeah! Balance, congratulations! You are the worst best troop this game has to offer! Not design-wise. Personal feelings apart, the Khan's average rank is 1.05. Almost perfect. In a situation this unit has no business in ever being part of. Isn't that great? Anyway, in terms of melee, the Khans have as well seen a decrease in their KD against low tiers from 148.5 to 90.1. A change of 39%, while they have seen an improvement against high tiers from 3.59 to 4.17, an increase of 16%. Their Kia as well followed the most common trend with an increase of 26.6% against low tiers and a decrease of 23.6% against high tiers. Against cavalry, the Khans had the second best KD with 96.5 against low tiers and 16.5 against high tiers, while in terms of Kia they claimed the first spot against high tiers with 8.56%, but ranked second against low tiers with 5.6%. As always, this troop is out of any chart imaginable, thanks to a mixture between good armor, good weapon skill and likely the best AI in the game. So, in the end, what changed for shock troops from patch 1.8 to 1.9 and 1.0? Well, let's address the elephant in the room, the AI. The AI regarding longer types of weapons was indeed fixed. This can be seen in the troops like the Voulgier and the Battanain Falxman that didn't follow the same trend of other shock troopers and improved in most stats in comparison to 1.8. In regard to performance, it looks like the combat changes regarding formations impacted the units quite heavily. It made shock troopers way better than they were before at dealing with high tiers, improving their KD score by 145% on average, with the only unit recording a decrease in performance being the tier 4 Falxman, that lost 41% of its 1.8 KD against high tiers. The improvement against high tiers can also be seen in the Kia stats that were on average 26.6% less than on 1.8, with, once again, the only unit not following the trend being the tier 4 Falxman. They increased its Kia against high tiers by roughly 17%. And if at first it looks like they improved, let me bring up the improvement graphs against low tiers. Well, in this case it's more like worsening graphs. In terms of KD, the units lost on average 46% of their performance, with the only unit improving in this scenario being the tier 5 Battanain Falxman. In terms of Kia, the average increase in casualties was roughly 59%. With the Fian champion inflating the number by recording an increase of 380%. The only two units that have recorded a decrease in casualties were the Voulgier with a marginal 6.6% and the Battanain Falxman with a significant 50.4%. If we have to follow the law of most enemies will bring more low tiers than high tiers, then the shock trooper seems to have lost performance and no S-ball amount. But we also have to not discount the fact that the changes in the combat mechanics of 1.9, especially regarding formations and commands, might play a role here. If I have to give out my opinion on them, I would say they overall got worse than they used to be. But until I can get around to 10 shielded infantry, I don't want to make that statement final. Anyway, this update on the state of shock troops is finally over. I hope you found the video informative, and if you want to access the data and more of this very video, you can find the link in the description. Thank you all for watching, share this video on some social medias if you want to help the channel out, and next time we'll meet, I will bring the update regarding the state of archers and horse archers. We are going to talk about kill by arrow, melee performance and under pressure performance. And don't forget to have a look at the best melee cavalry in this video right here.